Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Ann Owens. I'm founder of History of the Heartland. I'm a cancer patient, so my voice is not very good. But I appreciate beyond belief that everyone showed up tonight. I also want to let you know I've left some of my business cards on the table. I want you to take those and keep in contact with me. Follow the History of the Heartland page. But I'm also going to pass some notebooks around. If you would like to, I would love to do this maybe once a year where we have a little bit of a Fans Field reunion. We're very blessed that people like Roe Skidmore I've known my entire life. He is one of the most giving, kind people ever. I've been very blessed that Don Humphreys entered my life because of this event. Again, very kind, generous with their time, and want to share. So I also wanted to introduce Brett Robertson. He's the chairman of History of the Heartland. He will be the moderator tonight, so I'm not in charge the whole night. However, I do want to pass around notebooks, so if you would be willing to sign your name, your email, phone number, whatever, so I have a way to keep in contact with all of you. And after we've done the initial conversation, we're going to have you guys share your stories, okay? So thank you very much. Thanks so much to Doherty's. Britain is beyond belief. So if you have any extra change, drop it in your tip jar before you leave.
Thank you, Ann. So for most people, I think Roe probably needs no introduction, but there's some younger people here tonight. And so I'm going to introduce you anyway. Roe grew up in Decatur playing baseball in local leagues. And after entering Millikan University, was signed as a pro athlete and played professional baseball for 10 years from 1966 to 1975. And for 2 of those years, 67 to 68, he was with the Decatur Commodores. At age 22 in 1968, Roe hit 27 home runs for the Commodores and set the Commodores' all-time home run record for a season. And in the following 2 years, 69 and 70, Roe got called up to join the Cubs down the stretch. So if we talk about Jerry Royce tonight, I'm not doing my job. So we're supposed to stay focused on Fans Field tonight. So we're not going to go into that part of your history, maybe another time. And it's also a real pleasure to introduce Don Humphreys. Don has a truly unique historical perspective on Fans Field, because you basically grew up there, didn't you, Don?
Yes.
And Don's father was a groundskeeper for the Commodores, and as a result of that connection, Don started helping out pretty young in the 40s, and he ended up doing just about every job I think that was available around the park over the course of a couple of decades, and we'll talk about that tonight as well. But first, I want to thank a few people for making tonight possible. Is Mark Allen here? Mark Allen, yeah. Thank you, sir, for your unique collection of Commodore memorabilia. It's in the back there. I hope everybody gets a chance to look at some of those items before you leave. Thank you so much for that. Jim Wilkerson from Buick Realty. Jim, where are you at? There you are in the back. Jim is going to tape us tonight for posterity. The tape of these discussions with these two gentlemen are going to be given to the local history room at the Decatur Public Library. And Gary Williams. Gary Williams, where are you, sir? There you are at the bar. Yeah, Gary, thanks so much for setting up tonight's sound system. Really appreciate it. And John Hawkins, the owner of Doherty's, and his daughter Bryn, thank you so much for hosting us tonight. All right, let's Don, let's start off a little bit with you. Tell us about your father's connection, if you would, to Fans Field and to the place we are tonight. How did he start working at Fans Field?
Well, my dad worked for a gentleman by the name of Ray Hill, who just happened to be at that time owned this particular bowling alley. Okay, and he had another employee out at the ballpark taking care of the grounds. Ray was also president of the board of directors out there and the general manager. I don't know how he wound up with all that at one time, but anyway, Chet had told Ray he was going to move out of town, after the season was over. So that's how my dad got out there, sometime in the 30s. I don't know what time. But anyway, I have a brother and sister, 5 and 6 shoulders, and I have. And we all grew up out there. I was born in 43, and as soon as the game started and I was carried in there, I've been around that place ever since. It was, there's some things about this particular building that I could relay, but I'm not going to take the time now. But it was unique that I grew up a little kid, and the amount of time that the ball players spent with me teaching me how to catch and throw a ball. By the time I was 5 and 6 years old, I could play with the big boys. And when I was 6, I chased foul balls down the left field line, got paid for it. Man, everything else we did out at the ballpark, you just did it, And but I made about $60 a year. But then in the fall, you bought some pants for school and some shirts. That didn't last long. But I got a quarter a night to spend on whatever I wanted to spend it on. But then back then, ice cream bars and fudgesicles were a dime, candy bars were a nickel, snow cones were a dime, popcorn peanuts were a dime, soda pop was a dime. Dadgum hot dog was out of the question because it was a quarter. But from chasing the foul balls there, I chased foul balls for, I don't know, till I was 10, 11. Anyway, some of the ball players at that time, as I said, they spent a lot, why they would play catch with a little kid, I have no idea. Because Nelson Burbrink and Nick Strasta spent a lot of time. They'd come out to the ballpark in the afternoon. The players back then, there wasn't a whole lot they could do, so you'd look up in the stands and there'd be 4 or 5 of them in the middle of the afternoon just sitting up there passing time. And those guys played a lot of catch with me. And later on, as time went on, you rub shoulders with these guys all the time, and you're your friends, and you don't really think anything about it. But then you start meeting some of these guys that go on to the major leagues, not too many. If you average 1 or 2 a year that it might eventually get to the major leagues, you're probably doing pretty good. Some of the guys that I had Charlie Paula, Johnny Scabby was from Springfield, Illinois. Charlie Paula was a Cuban. This is also in the early 50s to about 53 before Castro shut Cuba down. The guys couldn't come play ball. So we had several Cubans. Ironically enough, from 52, 3, and 4, they were independent. They were not affiliated with any major league team. So all their players come from, maybe a team had a couple of players they wanted to play, but they didn't have roster positions for them, so they were looking for something like that. And those 3 years that they were independent, probably some of the better 3 years of baseball was played out there. Prior to 1950, it was a 3I league, Illinois, Indiana, and what's left? Iowa. And they had Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Evansville, Terre Haute, Paris, Mattoon, Springfield at one time, Peoria at one time, Kokomo, Indiana. I mean, it was a conglomeration. Then after 50, when a lot of people had hard times putting baseball together, they had, what I want to say, looking for, they had, lost my thought. They, anyway, go ahead. Go ahead, take a break out there.
Yeah, Don, I was going to ask you, what were some of the other jobs that kids could have? I mean, there was you had the job, chasing out foul balls. First of all, did you get paid by the foul ball, or was it like a nightly?
Nightly. It was nightly, and the only reason at 6 I chased them foul balls because my dad was sitting right down there at the end of the grandstand. The groundskeeper, there's 2 gates down there that open up to go out on the field and things with. And when them gates were shut, Ike Coleman, my dad, John Bass, Top Goodman. I'm not going to tell you what this other bench was called, but there was about 5 or 6 guys sat back there all the time. And any given night, there's a variation of this combination of guys that would be there. And of course, they was all Dad's friends, and they all would, you know, getting the field ready before the game. They would go out there and pitch in and help out. And sometimes it was pretty interesting on that bench. But I chased foul balls there for, like I say, till 1954. And that was the end of they were Class D, because when they went out of baseball in 50, they were Class B. When they come back in, they were Class D. It had been a 3I league. Now it's a MOV league. And it was only the MOV league 4 or 5 years, not very many, and it became the Midwest League. They had, let me think. Oh, they had, I'm trying to think. The last year it was independent. Johnny Lucadella was the manager, and he had a tall, slender pitcher with him that they had a cousin of his wife, and she was about the age of my sister, so for about 5 or 6 weeks that summer, she spent most of the time over at our house, where there was about 4 or 5 girls from the neighborhood all the same age. But this tall pitcher, his name was Jack Bumgardner, and he always was telling people that he had a brother out in Hollywood kicking around trying to get in the movies. And I guess he did a right for himself if you know him as James Garner. And that had, I'm trying to think, Johnny Scabby was from Springfield, went to the big leagues. Charlie Paulo went to the big leagues. Oh man, I'm just totally blank right now. Rich, you're not much help.
Let me ask a real question. So Roe, do you remember the first time that as a kid you went to Fansfield?
I was born in 1945. Don's older than I am, but that's a long time ago, buddy. Maybe remember that.
Well,
The
maybe
first
not
time.
the first time, but you went there, right, as a kid?
Yeah, no doubt. My dad, a lot of you knew my dad, who was also Roe Skidmore. Very few Roe Skidmores in the whole world with that weird name. But my old dad sold shoes for 42 years at Ropp's Shoe Store. And he'd come home at 5 o'clock, and Mom would have supper on the table. We'd eat, and he would load me in the car, and we'd go to Fansfield when the Commodores were in town. So I'd been going out there almost as long as Don, not quite as long, but that was a big thrill for me. I grew up a couple blocks from Johns Hill Park, and all I ever wanted to do in my whole lifetime was play baseball. And
Did it at that point as a kid, did you consider that a possibility that you were going to become a pro athlete?
would you believe me if I said yes? I know that sounds kind of arrogant, but I wanted to do that.
So you kind of knew that, yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to do, and
Yeah.
it's hard to focus on anything else,
Yeah.
including grades and things like that. but yeah, the greatest part about going to the ballpark was obviously I like to watch the players, and I'd come home and mimic them and try to stand like them and swing like them and all that. But the best part was about the 8th inning when we could go down under the tunnel. If the old timers that remember the ballpark, the players had to walk out the back of the dugout across the runway into the clubhouse. There was a gate there, and I'd start pulling on my dad's sleeve. Let's go downstairs. And when the game ended, the players would walk right by, and I could be from me to you, those players. And man, if I could ever be one of those guys, I thought that'd be the greatest thing in the world. I later found out they were, 19, 20 years old, scared to death, no money in their pocket, 1,000 miles away from home. Didn't see all that stuff when you're a little kid. They were just like, like gods. So anyway, that's my memories of Fansfield when I was, 5, 6, 7 years old.
And you started playing local baseball. As a kid, right? In Decatur, obviously.
Yeah, we had back then, Little League was comprised of all the public parks. No adults could be involved. That was the number one rule at the top of the list. We played during the day. We got our own team. Johns Hill had a team. Lions Park had a team. I think a guy named Sam Inlow played for them. He's sitting out there right now. That's why I won't say anything bad about you, Sammy. Anyway, Galloway, Steve Smith. There's some people here that know exactly what I'm talking about. And all the parks in town had a Little League recreation department sponsored team, and we'd play each other, ride our bikes to the parks, and play each other. And at the end of the season, whoever was the top two teams left standing, we got to play our championship game at Fans Field. And man, that might as well have been Wrigley Field. It was like going into a Garden of Eden, you know, a grass infield, which no other park had at that time. And so Fans Field was always kind of a revered place for me when I was growing up.
So your first game playing at Fans Field was with the Johns Hill rec team then, right?
That's right. I think I was maybe 9 years old, something like that. I got to play at Fans Field. I hit one out.
You did?
Of the infield. That was my best goal back then. That's all I had. But yeah, that was a big thrill.
So how did that work then? There was no adult coaches, no parents involved. You guys just organized yourselves, or?
I hate to tell you, but it worked really well. Actually, I can remember I was the captain of Johns Hill's team, and you know, it started getting a little bit warm, and I would go around recruiting guys to play for Johns Hill and put their name on the list. And there was a card you could get at the recreation department, said the captain, which I put my name there, and then listed, I don't even know, 10 or 11 guys. We didn't have a very big bench at that time, but 10 or 11 guys that were going to play for Johns Hill that year. You got your team together, took it down to the rec department, and they would then in turn give the captain a schedule of what 9 o'clock in the morning, I think, is when the game started, when the park director showed up and put the bases out, and we would get the team together and pedal our bikes to Lions Park or Jasper or Galloway or wherever it might be, and Mueller Park, and play against that team. And we set up our own organization, so to speak, and we'd tell the recreation department who won after the game. I guess everybody was honest. There was nobody really to check us. I never thought of that till now. We could have said we won. Nobody probably would have known the difference. But anyway, yeah, that's how we did it.
That's a pretty cool system. So, Don, you did a variety of things then, and at what point was it? I mean, you had to be a certain age, I guess, to operate the scoreboard out. Was it right field?
No, actually, it was in center field. And while we're talking about defense, let me remind you that when they were out of baseball before 1950, when they got ready to come back in the next year, they tore the outfield fence down and moved it in 20 feet. So it was 340, 387, 391, and 340. Prior to that, the foul lines had been 360. There were never any cheap home runs hitting that ballpark. And but I went to the scoreboard in '55. I was 11 years old, and you know, actually, that was '54 was last year my dad worked there, because he had went out to the El Dorado Bowl 2 or 3 years prior to that, and you know, he's getting up 4:45 in the morning and working at the bowling alley to 9. Leaving there and going to the ballpark. The ballpark was just a summer part-time job, and his boss asked him how much he made at the ballpark, you know, working at the ballpark, and he said, "If I give you that much raise, will you just stay here?" So that was into my dad working at the ballpark. But I just made up my mind that my dad wasn't there, I wasn't going to work there either. And I don't know how on opening day I was with my dad, and we just come by the ballpark. It was about 20 minutes before the game to start. He said, "You going in to watch the game?" I said, "I guess so." You know, and I got out, went walking through the front gate like I owned the place and knew everybody there. And Abe Wilson saw me, and he hollered at me, and he said, "Donnie, where have you been?" He said, "You're our scorekeeper." And that was the first I knew about it. So, you know, I did a couple things and got ready to go out to center field at that time, keep score. After that year was over, we built the scoreboard over the right field fence. It was higher than the fence. We built it up over the top of it. So the next 2 years, I kept score. It was over a right field fence. We had a catwalk about 30 inches wide up there, and you just hang the numerals up and down. We had.
I'm sorry, so you're like 11 years old at this time, or?
I was 11. I was 11 in center field, 12 and 13 in right field, and it just progresses like that. I did anything that come along. When I knew when I got up in the morning, I was going to be at the ballpark 7:30 or 7:45, even though my dad wasn't there, and I knew there were certain things going to have to be done. I don't care if it was raining or not, there were certain things you were going to do. And
What were those things?
well, you always had, the grandstands actually belonged to Abe Wilson to take care of, and Curly Evans swept the grandstand, and Shorty Miller swept the box seats. And there was always paper coming out of there out on the field. So the first thing you did was you'd grab you a paper stick and a box and start walking around picking up paper and getting that out of the way. Then you'd start looking around. What's the foul lines look like? You got grass growing, you got weeds in them, you got to get them out of there. You know, and heat, hot weather didn't mean anything. I don't care how hot it was, those weeds had to come out of it. But in 1953, it paid off because that particular ballpark, that old rundown building that everybody saw going by there, was voted the most beautiful minor league park in the country. That picture that used to hang on the wall in the office, that's when that picture was taken. You know, I progressed, went from, I guess the 3 years I kept score, the Cardinals were in here with Al Unser. Then when they left, I went up and I became the clubhouse boy. That meant you cleaned the dirt off the spikes, polished them, did laundry, was the medic, you name it, and you did it. And it was first year we were getting ready, working toward getting ready to open up. A couple of weeks before, and we're putting lights up in the grandstand over the runway, over the top of the stairs as they come up from the bottom runway. And we put an extension ladder up there, and I got the bulb, and I'm going up the ladder, and I just get up high enough where I can reach the steel beams, and the ladder broke out from under me, so I'm hanging there. You know, the rung just fell out, and I'm hanging through that ladder, and I'm hanging on for dear life, believe me. And Abe was hollering at me, "Pull yourself up there, Donnie, change that light bulb." I did. I climbed right up in the rafters and sat down, and I said, "You go get me a ladder." But they got me a ladder, and I got down, and we finished them. And of course, like I say, we've got everyday events getting ready to come on. We've got some high school games going on. The team hadn't gotten in town yet, and I must be remiss, I didn't say anything about it. But in 52, 3, and 4, when they were independent, spring training was out there at the ballpark. You know what it's like in April out there trying to get ready to play ball? And of course, they'd had some burglaries, and they didn't have much equipment because everything was stolen. There's a bat back there, it looks like a half a bat, and it was splintered out on the back side. Nobody had stolen it, probably because of that. And they needed some fungos and stuff so they could fly balls to the outfield. A fellow that had a cabinet shop downtown here come out with a friend of my dad's, and he's talking, and they told him, you know, showed him that bat. He said, "I can take care of that." And he brought it down here, cut that bat out. There's a half bat back there they used it to hit fly balls to the outfielders with, till the fungal bat that's back there with it come in just a couple days later. But they didn't hardly have anything to start out that first year when they were getting ready to go to spring training. It's just every day it was just something different. And as we got going then, and as I said, after changing that light in the runway, opening day comes, and the screen behind the home plate only covers the area from the corner to the corner. Hugh Black was the business manager, and he put a new meaning on the word tight. And them foul balls would get up there, and they'd hit close to the edge of that screen, and they just right off into the stands where people could get the balls. You know, you got a 64 game schedule, and he probably bought 70 dozen, and that was it. So he's come up with his idea, we're going to save a lot of these balls going in the stands. We're going to put up 2 more strands of wire on each side of that corner so them balls hit that wire and they still bounce out into the foul ball territory. So we are I've got Abe and myself and old Harry that's now the groundskeeper, and he does not know diddly squat about what he's doing. He's a retired truck driver, and there's a lot of difference between what he was throwing and what they were growing. So I'm saddled with him because of all the years I've been there with my dad. So I'm trying to get him going. I've got the clubhouse to take care of, and anything else they can think of to throw at me. So we're getting this wire put up there. Got an extension ladder, go up there with hog rings and hog ring the 2 together. Can't reach 2/3 of the way up there, so you climb the wire up there so far, and it gets cut into your hands so bad. You just go up high enough where you can reach it over the roof and reach down there and do that. And we got them up, and all went to lunch, and I come back. I got back there with nobody there except myself, and I got the hog rings and the ringer, and I went up on the roof, and I'm laying there reaching down over the side, and one of the neighborhood boys come back. I didn't hear him walking on the roof, and all of a sudden, the only thing I know, he says, "Gotcha." And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking down at the ground. I'm ready to jump, I'm telling you. And I know I can't jump, because if I move, I'm gone. So I finally get calmed down and back up out of there. And we get down, and we go on through the year, and it's like I say, I'm working with Harry. We've got a couple pretty good players on the team. We get Andy Costco, one of the first big bonus babies of that era, when they started paying $60,000 bonus, unheard of at that time. These guys, most of the ball players are making $225 a month. They're glad when they go on the road because they get $5 a day meal money so they can eat. You know, and here comes Andy, and he's got this bonus. There's a big article in the paper about his bonus, and he's bought his folks a car or paid off their house or something. He drives in here in a new Plymouth, you know. And not seriously, he was a nice guy, but I mean, that kind of stuck in a lot of the players' throat that they're busting their hind end and not making any money, can't hardly survive, and he's got this bonus. So it's just, but Andy did get to the major leagues, not like everybody had hoped he would. He was up there 6-7 years. He floated around quite a bit. He didn't make it with one team and stay there. But I mean, this is just, like I said earlier, if you have 1 or 2 players that gets to the major leagues as a rule out of a season, you're doing pretty good. Also, I mentioned too, when I was small, at the early 50s, the lot behind the left field fence across Garfield, which wasn't a street at that time, it was a dirt road back to the warehouse, was empty. All the way back to that warehouse and all the way north on Woodford Street to J.L. Simmons Construction Company. When they had circuses and carnivals come to town, that was an ideal spot for them to set up. And when the circus come, they unloaded over there on Garfield where the overpass is. And now that overpass wasn't put there until the end of the 50s. And, you know, Dad would unlock the door going to the roof, and I'd go up there on the roof and watch them elephants bring them the wagons and things down the road, put them tents up, and had a good time up there just watching what was going on over there. That's quite a thing. And then probably nobody in this room has ever seen that happen. And most of the young people never will see that happen, I don't guess.
We're going to come back to some of the special events that were held at the field, because those are pretty unique things. Roe, did you get a $60,000 bonus?
60, yeah, I did. Or no, $60.
Tell us a little bit about kind of the events that led up to your signing. You know, when you first went pro.
It was interesting to hear you talk about Andy Costco, Danny. He was my roommate in 1972 in Indianapolis.
Oh, is that right?
And I wish I'd known he'd have got $60,000. I was buying him supper every night. He must have sent that money home or something. He didn't have any of it left.
It's a small world.
Yeah. Anyway, yes. The year I signed, you mentioned somebody, I think, Donnie, you mentioned Al Unser. The old timers around know his name. He had Boyd Dell Unser, went to St. Teresa, was around my age in high school, ended up having a good big league career. Anyway, Al was a scout for the Atlanta Braves in 1966, and he signed me from Millikan University. And the day I signed the contract, I went with him over to Peoria to watch some. He called me and said, you know, do you want to go over to Peoria and watch the state baseball finals? Al Unser was a scout, so I wasn't going to say no, that's for sure. So anyway, I had no idea what was to come later on in the day. But anyway, I spent the day in Peoria with Al Unser watching baseball games, high school baseball games. On the way back, he didn't say a word to me until we got back to Decatur. He asked me if my dad was home from work. This was probably 6 o'clock in the evening or something. And I said, yeah, I guess so. And he goes, well, when I take you home, I want to come in for a minute. And so we went in the house and we sat down at the table, and Al said to my dad, he looked at me, he didn't look at me, he said to my dad, he said, we want to sign Roe, and we're going to give him $2,500 to sign. And my dad said, no, he's got another year at Millikan left, and he plays basketball and baseball, and I'm kicking him under the table. Shut up, you know. Ask me, don't ask him. Anyway, ended up, my dad and I exchanged several glances, looks, went in the other room, talked a second, and I prevailed, and I signed the contract for $2,500. Now you got to realize I'd never seen $250 all in one place before, let alone $2,500. So that's a lot of money to me. I would have paid them to play, to be honest. So that was the signing. That was the big bonus I got to sign with the Atlanta Braves in 1966.
And they needed you were signed as a catcher, is that right?
Yeah, I played shortstop and third base all the time I was growing up. And at Millikan that year, we had two catchers. Both of them got hurt real early on, and they were looking for some dummy that would put the gear on and get back there. and so I volunteered. I don't remember volunteering anyway. I ended up back there some way, and I caught the rest of the year for Millikan. And I really hadn't caught much, you know, every now and then in the summertime or whatever. But the Atlanta Braves at that time were looking for catchers in their organization, so they drafted a bunch of catchers from across the country. They sent me to Yakima, Washington, which was in the Northwest League, and that was a little bit west of Decatur, in the state of Washington, which I'd never been on an airplane before either. But I went to Yakima, Washington. They had 4 catchers on that ball club, and we'd play like a day or two, then the next guy would come in, then the next guy, you know, before I got back in the lineup, it was the next week. Well, any of you that have ever played the game know that timing has a lot to do with hitting, and it's pretty tough to get your timing when you're only playing 1 or 2 days a week. Anyway, I really had a good year. I tore that league up. I think I hit 193. Is that what it was, Shannon? 197 or 193? Whatever. It wasn't very good. Well, next spring I went to, I'm getting to a point here about the Commodores, so hang with me. Next spring I went to spring training with the Atlanta Braves minor league organization, and spent the minor league season, the spring training season at West Palm Beach, Florida. And right at the end of the spring training year, I broke an ankle, slid into home plate, broke an ankle. So I was on crutches for about a month when the regular season started. Well, right as I got okay and got ready to play, I got a call into the manager's office, and how do I want to say this with the Grays? He pretty much told me to go home and get a real job. So they handed me a pink slip, if you all know what that means. So I got in the car and drove from West Palm Beach, Florida, back here to Decatur to my dad's house. And this was about toward the end of April, I guess. The season started the 1st of April, so I missed the first 3 or 4 weeks with my bad ankle. Drove back to Decatur and came to my dad's house, and I was lower than a snake, man. I thought it was all over before I ever got started. Got into Decatur and called a guy named Gene Thompson, who many of you old timers know, Swede Thompson. He was a scout for the Giants, and been around and watched me at Milliken. I thought he liked me. I wasn't sure, but I was going to find out. Anyway, I called him and I said, Swede, I just lost my job with the Braves. Does the Giants have any, he was scouting for the Giants, do the Giants have any jobs anywhere in the country? I'll go anywhere, play anywhere, do anything. And first thing he said to me, he said, now, did you play some first base at Milliken? I said, oh yeah, I played a lot of first base at Milliken, which I hadn't, but that was his question, so I was going to say yes. Anyway, he said, well, hang tight and I'll call you back. We've got a guy playing first base for the Commodores that's hitting $1.50, and we're going to send him down to the rookie league. So he called me back, sure enough, about an hour later, and said you'd be at the ballpark the next day, which was a Sunday. There was a doubleheader against Quincy, which happened to be the Cubs organization, against the Quincy Cubs. And you go out to the ballpark, and our general manager, Dutch Henry, will sign you to a contract, and we'll let you play for the Commodores and see how you do. So I went to the ballpark, signed my contract, played both ends of the doubleheader that afternoon at first base, went 6 for 7, hit 2 balls out in the street. I'm back on top. 12 years later, I got to play, and so I owe a lot to Gene Thompson and an old scout named Richie Klaus, who was around too. Those guys took care of me, took me under their wing, and gave me a rebirth, second chance, and just happened to be fortunate enough to take advantage of it. That's how I got started with the Commodores.
Now, it didn't take long, if you just look at your career on paper, you see that year in Yakima, right, when you were barely hitting your weight, right?
Yeah.
And then pretty much day one with the Commodores, all of a sudden you're kind of this slugging first baseman. So as you look back, what was it that just like overnight you were a different player?
Well, I'll tell you what it wasn't. It wasn't launch angle, and it wasn't roar, and it wasn't, I don't even know whatever else they talk about. I don't understand it these days. See the ball and hit it, and get your hands out and get the head out and hit the ball. That was the hitting instructions back then. A new scenario, a new appreciation. It shook me up pretty much when I thought that I wasn't going to ever get a real shot to play. I knew I could play. I knew I could hit. Thought I could. Just needed a chance to play every day. And it makes so much difference when somebody believes in you, which Gene Thompson, he told me, he said, son, I know you can hit. So you go to the plate and play every day, and you're going to do all right. And somebody believes in you, and you got a new ballpark, a new set of circumstances. makes all the difference. I gotta give Donnie credit over there, though. All I did was show up at the ballpark and go 0 for 4. You were taking care of all the equipment and the grounds and all that stuff. So anyway, the Lord had his hand in all of this, because it just was kind of weird that I grew up loving Fans Field, and then I got to play there for 2 years. So
Yeah, it was a pretty amazing setup. There are very few people, I mean, I don't know if you know anybody else that got to play 2 years like that in the minors in their hometown.
you know, it's kind of interesting playing in your hometown. Everybody knew me, for one thing.
Yeah.
And on the nights I hit 2 home runs, it was great, man. Everybody came up, oh, you know your name, whoa, congratulations. But on the night you strike out 3 times, not so good for everybody to know you.
Want to go hide them?
Exactly.
There were some pretty exotic events that happened at Fans Field from time to time, and both of you guys would have some memories of those, I'm sure. Don, what comes to your mind?
Well, there are several things. Decatur always was financially strapped, but in the early 50s, they tried a lot of promotions. They had...
I'm sorry, so it was financially strapped. Was that partly because they weren't affiliated with a major league club because they were independent? Was that part of the issue?
Not really, because they were financially strapped the whole time I ever knew them. But
Paying guys too much money.
they had, for one thing, back early, there were 3 what you call clowns of baseball: Bobo Nickerson, Al Shaft,
I think.
and
Jackie Price.
and Jackie Price. I'm gonna let you tell
Real tough about Al.
About Jackie Price.
About Al.
Yeah, Jackie Price. I'll tell you about Jackie Price. He was a guy. You guys aren't going to believe this guy. I don't even know where he came from or where he went, but he showed up at the park every now and then, and this guy he had a bazooka, right? And it's like a little cannon, and he would set that cannon on home plate and put a baseball in it and shoot it off, up in the air. I mean, I don't know how high a regular fly ball goes, but this baseball was out of sight. So, an easy guy, or you would think, okay, the guy's gonna run under the ball and catch it, right? Well, yeah, he ran under it, but he didn't do it on his feet. He got in his Jeep, and he was drive around the infield. The ball would go up in the air, he'd get in his Jeep, drive around in the infield. It seemed like forever before the ball came down. Soon, you'd watch him, and sooner or later, here you go, stick out his glove, catch it every time. I never saw him miss one. Unbelievable. Then he'd set up like a trapeze over home plate, hang by his feet upside down with a baseball bat, had a pitcher out on the mound throwing batting practice to him, whacking the ball all over the park upside down with a bat. So this guy was something else, man. Jackie Price. We like to watch him better than the ball players, Probably better than most of us too.
What was he local, or did he come in? Was he on the road, or?
No, he traveled the circuit of the ball clubs in the summertime. He might be here today and somewhere over in Timbuktu tomorrow. I mean, his wife and him traveled, and after the show was over, they hit the road, and she drove part of the time, and he drove. They basically slept in that car.
In his Jeep. Pulled his Jeep around behind his car.
No, my dad knew a fellow that had an old military Jeep, and they would borrow that. That old military Jeep, that windshield would, you get it in a certain position, it'd just slide right off the Jeep. And they used to take it off and set it up against the end of the grandstand. He didn't want to break the glass. But he also had a sling about 4 foot long. And I'm going to tell you what, that was the most accurate throws I ever saw. We had a sign on the outfield fence. I think it was Good Luck Margarine, because they had like a 4-leaf clover on it. And there just happened to be a boy sitting on the fence post on the other side of the fence there, right above that. And he said, Watch me get him off the fence. He slung that thing out there and it hit right in that 4-leaf clover, and that boy just collapsed right over backwards on there. And he had, he would take that Jeep when he was out there. He always had a wire with him, and he'd get it turned into a big circle, and he'd wire that steering wheel so it'd stay there. And he would hang on his knees over the back of that and have somebody out there when that Jeep would go by him throwing balls at him to catch. He could put, he'd get line 4 guys up down first base path there, and he'd start playing catch with one. Then he was throwing 2 balls at a time. Then he was throwing 3 balls at a time. And when he threw the 4 at a time, he did like a forward roll. And when he come up out of there, them balls was just shooting right out there. But he managed somehow to get them right to whoever was throwing them at it. I saw, gosh darn it, who was a black sprinter, won the Olympics.
Jesse Owens.
So Jesse Owens was out there and run, actually didn't have hurdles, but he'd run chairs. We set chairs out there, and he'd run down the base path, and you could hear his cleats hitting that chair as they'd go over, tick, 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 tick. And he said that's how he knew he was in stride, because that's what he should do every time. He should just tick that with his cleats. And he put a player on first, second, and third, and home with him, and he's going to race him around the bases. And before he'd get to the base, he'd have about 10, 12 feet. He'd say, go, because he wanted them up to speed by the time he got to them. And he, of course, he was at passing everybody except the player he had on third base was pretty quick. And it was all he could do to beat him from third to home. I'm telling you, he just did pass him. But seeing Jesse Owens, saw Jack Dempsey. He refereed a wrestling match, believe it or not. We had wrestling matches out there and boxing matches out there. Donkey ball. If you've never seen that, you've missed that too. That's quite a sport. But I mean, they used, there's a ball back there that says Negro League on it, and it comes from the Indianapolis Clowns and the Kansas City Monarchs when they played there. They played the ballpark 4 or 5 times through the years.
Satchel Paige is with, was it the Kansas City team?
Gosh, I couldn't tell you individually. But you know, there was so many things like that going on, and the park, they tried to use the park for as many things to get some kind of money generated that they could do. I don't know how much it helped, obviously, at that stage in the game. I wasn't big enough to worry about it anyway.
What went on 4th of July?
Well, we had 2 fellows come over. Usually Art Smith and his cousin had come over for years and set them off. And all of a sudden, we got these 2 young fellows, and there's one woman with them and a little girl. And you'd look out there one time, and one of them guys would be with her, and pretty soon the other guy would be with her. I don't know who was supposed to be with her. Anyway, we used to have a place in center field. You could walk out there and just find it, the little trench where they set the mortars. And so, you know, they come in, and I told them, I said, you know, I took them out there and showed them, so set your mortars in here. And I said, you know, get your set pieces, whatever you gotta do, you go do what you gotta do. And so I said, if you need anything, holler, we'll get it for you. So I look out there pretty soon, and they're about 30 feet past the end of the grandstand down there, putting them mortars in the ground. And I went down there and I said, hey, you need to put them out there in center field. You know, I'm a kid. They pay about as much attention to me as, you know. And so I went and told Abe, I said, Abe, you better tell them guys to go move them mortars. I said, they're out there at the end of the grandstand. So he went out there, and they put them out in center field where they're supposed to be. And of course, after the game, the fireworks start, and the next thing we know, I don't know what happened, whether they got a shell in there upside down or what. But when you do that, the concussion that sends it into the air drives that thing into the ground, and then they come up out of there very slow. And about the time they get where your head is, they go off. You know? So, and that's what happened. And I'm sitting down in the dugout watching things going on, and all of a sudden that fire lit in the box of rounds that haven't been shot off yet. And the one guy is standing right there beside him. And I thought, he's gonna jerk that canvas off there and get that fire away from him. And he just apparently froze. He just stood there. And all of a sudden, those started going off. And when they're out of control, you have no idea where they're going. So I run out there, and the time I got out there, he hadn't moved yet. So I ran in and got him and jerked him out of there. Of course, the fence is on fire by now. So it burned a pretty good hole in it out there in center field. And the next day, we spent all day out there in the heat replacing that fence. But I mean, it's like I say, you never knew what was going to happen. You just had to be prepared for anything.
The 4th of July to remember, right?
Yeah.
Rob, when you were playing, did you probably, as a player, did you guys even pay any attention to what was going on with those special events and stuff, or were you more focused on prepping for the game?
A lot of it went on when we were in the clubhouse, but when there were guys like this, Jackie Price and fireworks and things, we'd come out and watch them. It was always interesting, the special nights they would have, and that's what Don's talking about. This didn't happen every night, but on the special occasions when they were trying to draw people in so we could get paid the next week, you know, get some money. So, but you know, ballparks in the minor leagues all around the country, that's a big deal, and it's really a big deal now. Of course, they play in places that are just like big league parks now. The city gets involved with the financing and all of that, and private investors and so forth. And when we played, there wasn't a lot of money, and they were always trying to raise money for the expenses, for equipment and so forth. One of the things about hitting is you want to be careful, because if you broke your bat, you may not get another one for a few weeks, because the bat order's in there, but it's not here yet. Used to hear that a lot. Now in the big leagues, these guys have got 2 or 3 dozen bats, you know, in their lockers, personalized bats. But we were scuffling for equipment a lot of times back in those days. In the A-ball, yeah.
What was there a coaching staff? Obviously, there's a manager. Was there a batting coach?
Now, Rookie League has a manager, pitching coach, a hitting instructor, probably a bench coach. They've got 3 or 4 coaches, even in rookie ball. When I played, AAA had a pitching coach, AA on down had a manager, and the manager did everything, made the room reservations, carried the equipment, coached third base, as well as managing the ball club. There wasn't even a pitching coach, generally speaking. The pitcher who pitched the night before coached first base for the game the next day. But there wasn't money to pay a staff, let alone the players, hardly.
And what kind of relationship was there between you and the manager of the team at that time? Did he have time to give you a lot of instruction? Or?
It depended on the manager.
Yeah.
I've played for some really good guys. I mean, Whitey Lockman and Frank Verdi and Leo. No, I'm not gonna put that one in there. Leo DeRocha. I'll put him in the other category. But anyway, most of them were really conscious of their responsibilities, and they tried to give everybody attention. Obviously, it's not going to be like when you got 4 or 5 or 6 coaches on the coaching staff, but you're pretty much on your own back then. There wasn't a lot of, if you wanted extra hitting, you'd come out to the park early and have the bat boy or somebody hanging around there. There used to be a kid named Roger Lowe that was around Frank Kopenbarger. Roger's here tonight, by the way. Well, you know. He used to throw batting practice to the ball players, and and you just rounded up whoever you could get and you did it on your own. So that was the life of a low minor leaguer back in those days.
Yeah, so a lot of smaller staffs.
For sure.
What about the press? Was there a press box at Vance Field?
It was up on the roof. The balls and strikes lights on the scoreboard, the controls for it was up in the press. Okay, so normally what you had up there was the announcer, official score, and somebody working them lights.
And would the official score be somebody from the press? Or?
The Herald and Review has a rule. Yeah. The got through the years. I don't know how many different fellows I've met from the newspaper out there. Probably 10 or 12, I expect. Everybody that had been the sports editors, you know, and then they'd get on the staff and they'd work and you know, Falstrom and all of those fellows. Bob spent several years coming out there being an official scorer. I think Tupper made it out there some. Before that, yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you, Don, but there was generally somebody from the newspaper, a press person up there. But there's a guy sitting out here right now that kept score for the Commodores. Rod, how many years did you keep score, Rod? Last year. The last year. Is that why they shut down?
They did.
Sorry to embarrass you. I didn't know that. I didn't know you were the last year. Anyway, yeah, Roger kept score.
A lot of interesting people in this audience today.
They had, you know, I think one of the sports guys would cover them for so many games, and then, you know, they kind of rotated because a steady beat at night, most guys don't like that too well anyway. But the largest crowd that was in that ballpark up until 1964 was the Harlem Globetrotters when they played. They put listen, they brought the court in the afternoon. Goose Tatum, Marcus Haynes, Sweetwater Clifton, all those guys, all the original ball players put the court on the ground, unloaded the truck, put the court down. When the game was over, they come back out, picked the court up, loaded it in the truck, and got in their bus and left. Fancy that happening today, huh? But
And that would have been what 5,000 people or?
well, now the stands would hold 5,800. We had 16,000 in there. We borrowed bleachers from Johns Hill, from 2 or 3 of the other small schools around here, and set the bleachers. You know, we had the stands this way, so we put the bleachers out between home plate and pitcher's mound, you know, around in that area. But yeah, I had some chairs down there up close. They really had a crowd until, like say, 1964, when Doster sold his business to Redbird Stations, and they must have given away, I don't know, 50,000 tickets, because they had 25,000 come through the gate, you know, and half of them left. There's nowhere to go. But that was the most that ever been in that park, was that particular night. And we put tied rope from the H pole at the bullpen down to the fence, so people could stand down there on both sides. I mean, you know, it was just people on top of people on top of people. And it's like I say, there was no place to go. So a lot of them, they just come in the gate and circulated right on back out and left. But yeah, that was a large crowd. And, you know, the gate was free. So everything they was able to take in from it, and that's the kind of a night they liked, because that was profitable. That was money went to the bank. You know, they didn't have, but unfortunately they didn't have many of those nights. The problem is the fan base. You take a town the size of Decatur and you're only getting a crowd out there of 500 or 600 people at the most. That's a problem, because the gate is a big percentage of the profit, okay? If, you know, the concession stands, they've had to buy all that stuff. As a matter of fact, we used to early on, we used to roast the peanuts out there ourselves and package them. And then later they just got prepackaged peanuts. But, you know, as things change through the years, I don't know if it's on here or not. No, I don't show. There used to be a little ice box at each dugout where they put a block of ice in there on pipes, and the players had cold drinking water. Okay, well, the reason they had that ice was because the coolers in the concession stand had to have ice. Way earlier, there was no refrigeration like that. So, Polar Ice House, they had a route. The guy would crush ice and carry it in, put on the soda there, put a block of ice in each one of those water coolers. And that way they had the cold soda and the players had cold water. When they got different coolers in the concession stands, that was the end of the ice water. You know, I mean, it was a transition throughout everything they've done. You had to be careful when they got rid of the ice coolers, because they were water coolers and the water got cold. And you had to be careful you didn't get the caps on the soda wet, because they'd rust. So, I mean, you know, you leave one thing and you get into another. And then, of course, they've got the just regular air coolers after that. But it's like I say, everything was always in transition. After, I guess, the third year I was in the clubhouse, we had a terrible storm one night, really a lot of high winds and rain. And up on top of the roof here, there's fixtures up there. They were about that wide and cast iron. And they had 3 1,500-watt bulbs in them. And I mean, they were heavy. And it blew. They had like knuckle cluster in there. And you tighten the bolt down in between them and lock them in the knuckle. Apparently they didn't get this one tight. And it was hanging right straight down to the roof. So Abe says, well, we got to go up there. We got a game tonight. We got to get that fixed. And I'm not too fond of going up there anymore anyway after what's happened to me. And Harry, you know, the three of us take the ladder up there, and I keep telling him, I'm not going up there. I don't want to go up there. Abe gets up there, and this guy's 70-something years old. He shimmies up that ladder. There's like a 2x8 catwalk that you walk on. And there's a beam up there like 5x5 or 6x6 that all of these reflectors are mounted on. And about that far from them, there are 3 big heavy wires about the size of my thumb running down through there. And you guys squeeze up in between them wires and that beam. And Harry was pretty rotund, and he was up there trying to get in and fit in that hole. And I thought he was going to fall off head first one time. And I told him, I said, finally, I said, Harry, get down. I'll go up there, like an idiot. Anyway, I get up there, and I'm not fond of being up there, and Abe says, okay, let's lift it up. We lift it up there, and I got hanging on to nothing except that support across there with my elbow, and I'm sitting there like this with one hand, and he gets his wrench out and going to tighten that up, and he drops it. So now it's here down there on the roof with Harry. And Harry's going to throw it up to him, except when he threw it up, he didn't get it close enough to him. So Abe and he let go of that reflector, and he let go of that reflector. That reflector flipped down like that, flipped me up over the top of that bar, and my knees caught in the wires there behind. And I'm sitting there rocking back and forth, hanging up with that bar, and I'm seeing that ground going just like that. And I thought, I couldn't believe it. And Abe pushes my legs down, gets my feet back on the catwalk, and he said, don't look down, Donnie, you'll be all right. I'm sitting there watching them clouds, and they're starting to move pretty good. So I said, you know, I'm sitting there and hanging on for dear life, and I finally looked down at the ground, and that helped a little bit. It wasn't moving near as fast as the clouds. And we finally got it tight. I got down off of there, got my feet back on the roof. Now, I'm terribly afraid of heights now. And we get down off the roof, get the ladder down on the ground. And I said, I'm never going up there again. Don't even think about asking it.
You survived.
Yeah.
Hey, if anybody ordered food, it is available back at the bar, so head on back. It's a little after 7. I'm going to ask you guys a couple more questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience to ask questions. But you were mentioning the reflectors. The reflectors was part of the lighting system, right?
Right. Yeah, they were the lighting system for the field.
So it's not like it wasn't like the modern, bright, high intensity lights that we have now. Ro, what was it like hitting under those at night under those conditions?
No fun. It was pretty tough. The higher up you go, the better the ballparks are, of course, and the better the lighting is. And in looking back, when I got to AAA baseball or whatever, and looking back at some of the Class A ballparks we played in, the lights were just so low. I played first base mostly, and the guy had hit a pop foul down the right field line, and you'd see the ball and you'd get halfway out toward it, and it was just gone. It was just fade into the blackness. Then you had to kind of wait a second till it came down below the lights again to pick it up. So it could make a guy look kind of bad, I'll tell you that.
And how often was it? Mostly night games, or?
Yeah, in A-ball you play 7 days a week. For however you get about 3 days off a year, every day after day after day, and they're all night games. Once in a while you'd have a Sunday afternoon game, but 90% of your games, 95% of the games are nighttime. So that's a big adjustment too. When a lot of guys in A-ball are just coming out of college and high school or whatever, and you're playing during the day almost the whole time, and then you have to adjust to lights, and the lights aren't very good to begin with. So that's a big transition.
Yeah. I guess to last question for both of you guys really is kind of looking back at the 50s and 60s. How big a deal was baseball in Decatur? I mean, was it a big part of being here? As a town, what kind of impact did baseball have on Decatur?
Don mentioned Commodores always had trouble drawing big crowds, drawing crowds, 500 to 1,000 people every night, maybe in the stands when I played anyway. But I never got the sense, the parks were always filled all day and all night, softball games, baseball games, rec league baseball games. Cardinals and Cubs pretty much split, some White Sox and Dodgers fans and so forth scattered around, Braves, but my experience growing up being around Decatur, baseball was always a topic of discussion. It was always on people's minds. I really, for the life of me, could never really figure out why Decatur didn't support professional baseball better than it did. Milliken always had a team, such as it was back then. They got a beautiful facility now for sure, but I never got the sense that baseball wasn't important in Decatur. But if you base it on the people that attended Fans Field, they had a problem. So.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why, it's like I said earlier, there's a support from the people. The people that come out there were rabid golf fans. There just wasn't enough of them. That's about the only simplest way I can put it. And everybody talked about baseball, but I used to hear, I don't want to go out there. They can't play ball. I'm going to tell you what, I've seen just as good ball played there as you can see if you go down to the Cardinal games. Listen, I've seen no hitters. I saw a perfect game. I saw triple plays, and some real defensive games. To me, 1-0, 2-1, 3-2, that's baseball. 20 to 15 is not baseball to me. That's not the game. And but people just, it's like I say, the people come out there were pretty rabid fans. There just wasn't enough of them, and I don't know how back then you got more out there, and particularly now, young people. There are so many things going on for young people. I'd hate to guess what kind of crowd they'd have if they opened up tomorrow. Yeah, you know, it'd be very, very slim. And I don't know, that's the thing that they always fought. What do you do to get people in the park? And I don't think that's changed since way back then. It's still a big question.
Absolutely. Let's open it up to the audience. Anybody have any questions for the panel tonight? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I recall that we were a Detroit affiliate before the Giants took over. Was I just too young to remember that?
Question is, were the Commodores a Detroit affiliate before?
Let Mark, stand up, Mark. Thanks to Mark for these uniforms back here, the jerseys and the big picture that used to hang in the ballpark back there.
That's the picture you were talking about hung in the office right there.
But to answer Sammy's question, Mark, there's a Detroit uniform back there, jersey back there. What year was that?
That was 61.
1961.
No.
So they were
last year.
Detroit was an affiliate for a couple of years, right?
4.
4 years, yeah. So anyway, I know that Detroit uniform or the jerseys back there belongs to Mark. Thanks for bringing that out, buddy. Appreciate that.
It's actually my dad. He will.
Don't, you take credit. You're the one. It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, besides seeing Roe play, my other memory of Fansfield was talking about Andy getting that $60,000 signing bonus. Roe, you tell me if I'm wrong about this, but I remember Rick Monday was the first guy to get $100,000. Played for Quad City Anchors. Does that sound right?
You had the Rick Reichert.
Rick Reichert?
Rick Reichert, not Rick Mindy.
Reichert, yeah.
Played for Quad Cities.
Yeah, Quad
He was the first bonus baby to get $100,000.
Yeah. My grandpa and I sat there and watched him play third base and made 5 errors in his debut.
Yeah, he never could hit either, really. He had a lot of money.
220,000.
What'd you say?
220,000 right
David Fletcher standing back there, you guys, and
The highest at the time, wasn't it?
He's the reason why there was a draft.
yeah.
Okay.
The doctor, David Fletcher, right back there, you guys, he just finished writing a book on Richie Allen, Dick Allen, and it is fantastic. I want y'all to get a copy of it and look it up and buy it and read it because it's really, really good. He did a lot of research, unbelievable amount of research in there, and did a great job, David, on that book, by the way.
Yeah, let's get the title of that book.
Well, Chili Dog MVP.
Chili Dog MVP.
Dick Allen, 72 White Sox, and transformation in Chicago. Transforming Chicago.
Just so you all know, Dick Allen cost me a first base job with the White Sox too. He hit several more home runs than I had. That's why. I mean, not that he didn't deserve it, but yeah, in 1971, I played in Tucson, which was the Chicago White Sox AAA affiliate. And I had, I think, 23 home runs and 84 RBIs, hit 299, had a great year. And that winter, I got a letter from Chuck Tanner, and it said, who was the manager of the White Sox. And Chuck wrote me a letter, and he said, we really like you. You're going to be my first baseman next year, 1972. That would have been in Chicago for the White Sox. So I had a pretty good winter floating around on a cloud, thinking I had a good shot at being the first baseman for the White Sox in 1972. One morning I got up and opened the newspaper, and it said, White Sox get Dick Allen in a trade. So I'd been around a little while by that time. I knew exactly what that meant. So I went to spring training with the White Sox, and the week into the season got traded to Cincinnati. But then I only had Tony Perez to contend with. So the timing's everything, right? But anyway, yeah, Richie Allen, great ball player, great hitter, good guy in the clubhouse.
You had some pretty good seats for the end of the '69 season, didn't you?
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. I was in 1968, I was in Decatur with the Commodores. Hit 27 home runs, by the way, and that's a record nobody will ever break. I got all my money together and paid them off to tear the ballpark down. So nobody's ever going to break that record of fans. If there's no park there, they can't hit more home runs than I did. But anyway, I was in Decatur in 1968 playing for the Commodores. 1969, I was drafted into the Chicago Cubs organization, and they sent me to AAA. So I actually skipped over AA and played most of the '69 year in Tacoma, which was the Cubs AAA club in the Pacific Coast League. And at the end of the year, 1969, if you're a Cub fan, you know what that year meant. I don't think it. Sammy, that's distracting for you, because I know what you're thinking with the Cardinals. See, there's a few Cardinal fans in the room, I know about that. But anyway, 1969 was the year the Cubs, I believe, August 10th or something, as late as that, they were actually in first place. I mean, eight or 9 or 10 games in first place in their division, 1969. And at the end of the year, they called a couple of us up to the big leagues. And I think the day I got there, I remember the Cubs were playing the Pirates, and Willie Stargell hit one out in the street in extra innings to beat the Cubs. And from that day forward, I'm not sure if there's a correlation because I showed up or what, but from that day forward, the Cubs couldn't buy a base hit, couldn't win a game. Long story short, the Mets overtook them and won the World Series, and I ended up winning the World Series in 1969. But I had some really good seats for those games during September, down behind the pole hiding from Leo Grosher in the dugout.
Yeah, this is really different than, right? DeRocher just didn't play any young players, did he?
I'm trying to think of some nice stuff to say about Leo, and dang it, I can't think of anything. No, his reputation was you got to prove to me that you can play at this level, boy. And then he wouldn't put you in the game to prove to him that you could play at that level. He didn't like the young guys. You had to be really, really special for him to get you in the lineup. And 1969, I literally, myself and a couple other guys, literally sat on the bench for the whole month of September. Did not get one at bat. Didn't get into a ball game. He played the same guys. Hundley, Banks, Beckert, Kessinger, Sando, Billy Williams, Jim Hickman. Same guys over and over and over, all 9 innings every day, right up to the end of the season. And in my opinion, they were just worn out, or I'm prejudiced, but yeah, he wouldn't put the young guys in, and that was his reputation. He carried that around with him, not just that year.
I think probably a lot of people, I don't know if people remember this shot, but you certainly do, the Black Cat incident in New York.
That was is anybody familiar with the Black Cat incident? Yeah, you know what that is. And Chicago Cubs fans know what that is. In 1969 again, the Mets were rapidly overtaking the Cubs. And I believe it was, I don't know, middle of September, something like that. I can't say the date, but we had a 2-game series in New York. So we go into New York, and all the New York papers were really on Ron Santo. Santo had popped off, said something, in the press about the Mets or whatever. The Cubs were like a game and a half still in front of the Mets when we went in to play New York, play the Mets at Chase Stadium, and the fans were on Santo, booing him and so forth. We came down the elevator in the hotel, and Santo had like 5 guys in 3-piece suits around him, walking him out to the team bus to go to the ballpark. Death threats and the whole deal. Anyway, we're in the ball game. Santo's on deck, and all of a sudden the crowd starts buzzing and really getting loud, and we're sitting in the dugout not knowing what's going on. in a minute it became apparent, we looked and there, someone had let a black cat out of the stands. And that thing ran, Santa was in the on-deck circle, and the cat, just like it was trained in the circus, the cat just ran back and forth 2 or 3 times right in front of our dugout. And, you know, Santa was looking around and waiting for somebody to come out of the stands after him or something. And of course, we were all sitting on the bench watching that. Leo was down at his end, jumping up and didn't get that, you know, like blankety blank thing. Where's security? He was going nuts. So my claim to fame for the month of September was not on the field, but I was sitting right in the middle of the dugout, had a first row seat for the black cat incident. I got a picture signed by Santa that can prove it, and I had hair under my cap, and I can't prove that.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, sir.
What would you tell us your memories of your at bat at Wrigley Field against the Cardinals? Would you tell me who came to get you to the plate and pitchers were thrown to you, et cetera? And did you get the baseball for your hit?
Yeah. Roger, that's a really good question. My one hit at bat with the Cubs. Listen, when you only do it one time, man, you remember everything. I was sitting on the bench behind my post, hiding, and one of the coaches, Joey Maltitano, looked down and says, "Okay, Skid, you're going to pinch hit." Joe Decker was the pitcher I believe I pinch hit for. Some of you guys probably know better than I do, is that right? Anyway, my immediate response was knees knocking together and not knowing where I was for a minute. You know, this is it, my big chance. So I go up to the bat rack, and generally speaking, you'll have 2 to 3 of your bats in the bat rack, right? Well, I walk up to the bat rack, and I'll be daggone if I could find my bat. I was shuffling through there looking for my bat. You know, they had the knob sticking up and your number on it. I couldn't find one of my bats, and I'm not wanting to look like a complete idiot. I just grabbed one, J.C. Martin, who was a backup catcher, grabbed his bat, you know, and looked around to see if anybody saw me scuffling around. Couldn't even find my bat, for crying out loud. But anyway, so I go up to the on-deck circle, and I'm standing there going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Jerry Royce was a left-handed pitcher for the Cardinals at that time, and I went to the plate. First pitch he threw me was a fastball, and I swung about, I'd say a day late at least, and hit it, you know, something to function, couldn't move. Anyway, I'd faced Jerry Royce in the minor leagues. I knew he was a lefty, he had this big overhand curveball, and I'm thinking he's got to throw me that left-handed curveball. I can't move, you know, I can't get around on his fastball. Sure enough, he hung the big curveball to me. Hit a line drive to left field over Joe Torre's head. Lou Brock fielded it in left field, threw it to Julian Javier at second base, and I had a hit in the big leagues. That was my first hit in the big leagues. I got the baseball, and later wrote on it first big league hit. If I'd just known better, I would have written first and last big league hit. I didn't know at the time it was going to be my only big league hit. But anyway, yeah, I got the ball now. It's really yellow and ugly. I can't believe it played with that. I think the years are doing it in, but I got it right on my mantle. Thanks for asking that, Roger.
No other questions?
Out of both of your times at Fanfield, what memory is one of your favorite memories that stick out?
Go ahead, Don.
Well, that's tough, because there are so
And
many.
your daughter
through the
asked
years.
that, you better answer that.
But I think the close association with the ball player, from the time I was small up through when I was done in the clubhouse, you know, and start getting ready to go to work elsewhere. But, you know, day in and day out, I was walking beside those fellows shoulder to shoulder. They were not somebody, well, I don't know what, extraordinary to me. They were my friends, you know, and so many of them guys has you know, had passed there. Some of them went to the big leagues. Some of them didn't have a prayer of a chance of ever getting to the big leagues. But, you know, they were all your friends, and you just hated to see something bad happen to somebody, get cut, released, you know. And my gosh, if you look back through the history of the ballpark, for many years, the longest played game, inning-wise, was played right out there until the Mets broke it in what, I don't know, 1990? Didn't they play 28 innings or something like that? They broke the record out here by 2 innings. And, you know, that record had been out here for years. So, I mean, it's not like the park sat here and nothing ever happened in it. You know, things, I don't know how to say it. It just, there was so many things going on through the course of growing up through that and befriending all of them guys. You know, they were a big family. That ballpark was my home. That's the easiest way I can put it. That park was my home. I had a set of keys. I had 9 keys on it. And the biggest key on it was to the gate between the clubhouse and the groundskeeper's room. And I took that, get the teeth up on it. I spent so much time over there in the dark, I could walk up to any door on that runway and find the key for that door without ever trying them. I could just go right to the right key. And listen, the only keys I didn't have was to the office and to the concession stand. I didn't want one to the office because we had 2 or 3 burglaries in there when I was about 16 years old in the office. So they put a burglar alarm in there. Well, when that thing goes off in the middle of the night, somebody's got to go out there and shut it off. Hey, I ain't got a car. I got to walk a half a mile to get there. I don't want that key. I'm not totally stupid. But I mean, it's just things like that. You know, you sit back and you look at these things and you laugh. I thought I was going to get to go see a World Series game one time. 1967, Detroit Tigers playing the St. Louis Cardinals. Jim Northrup playing center field, Mickey Stanley playing shortstop and outfield. They played over here. I knew them guys very well, real well. I get this call from my old boss, Jim Doster, and he said, "Donnie, I got a problem." And I said, "What's that, Jim?" He said, "Well, I've got this meeting I've got to go to, and I've got these 2 tickets to the World Series." I thought, man, I'm going to go to the World Series. No, I went to the meeting as Jim Doster. But I mean, you know, it's like I say, every day was a new day. You never knew what was going to happen. The ball players were people just like people sitting in here. And, you know, it's like I say, we were a family. When a pitcher had a really bad night, everybody felt bad for him, not just him. If he had a good night, everybody was thrilled for him. You know, I mean, it's just one of those things like to be in a family, and I don't know how to say it anywhere else. Thank you.
I played for 10 years in organized baseball for different organizations. I played for 2 years in Venezuela in their big leagues, their major leagues in Venezuela, and then I played 2 years of fall instructional league in Arizona. So that's a lot of ball clubs, and it's a lot of, like you say, Don, a lot of relationships developed. I've got guys I still talk to very frequently now. Haven't seen them for 30 years or 40 years, but I talk to them every couple of weeks, you know. It's kind of weird how that works, the bond you form with guys you spend every day, every minute of your life with, you know, for a long time. Specific memories of the Commodores. there's a couple of things that I think about, I guess. Number one is the beautiful hotel facilities we had. I mean, Dubuque, Iowa. You should have seen that hotel, man. It was deluxe. They had if you'd flip a coin with your roommate to see which side of the room you'd sleep on. If you got on the high side, you'd roll out of bed. If you're on the low side, it'd pin you up against the wall. None of them were really square. You put a golf ball on one side of the room, it just roll right down to the other side. Hotel in Dubuque. Then there was a hotel in Clinton, Iowa, and it was very modern compared to the other ones. Outside, at the end of the hallway, on each floor, there's a great big window with a fire escape outside the window. The fire escape was a rope. You think I'm kidding you? It was not. There was literally a rope outside so I guess if there's a fire, you go to the end of the hall, jump out the window, and go down the rope. I remember things like that. That's weird. That doesn't happen at the ballpark, but I don't know. There was one thing that happened. Roger and I were talking about it earlier before that I'd kind of forgotten about, and every now and then I think about it over the years. We had a doubleheader one afternoon, a day game, and during the first game, about midway through the game, I was sitting on the bench, and Noel Finley, a little second baseman that we had from California, was in the on-deck circle. And back in those days, the leaded bat was actually a leaded bat. I mean, they would drill a hole in the barrel of the bat, put some hot lead in there, let it solidify, and it'd stick in there somewhere or another. Anyway, this particular afternoon, Noel Finley was in the on-deck circle. I was sitting about in the middle of the dugout, and all of a sudden, something cold cocked me, man. I went down on the floor, didn't even know what hit me. The piece of lead they had put in that bat came out of it, shooting out of the end of that bat when the on-deck hitter was swinging it. It hit me under my eye, about right here. I still got a little scar there, and it knocked me cold. I saw stars for a few minutes, and they woke me up and sat me up and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, where am I? But I think I'm okay." Anyway, put it back. If that happened today, it would be on the disabled list, or the injured list. Excuse me, the injured list for it's no longer the disabled list, but for 3 weeks. Well, then they put a Band-Aid under my eye. I played the second game of the doubleheader, and I think I had 2 or 3 hits. So that was a new revelation to me. From that point on, I started closing one eye and hitting it. Not really. Anyway, I remember that incident at Fans Field very well.
I have one more question. Decatur has only had one state high school baseball championship. Eisenhower in 1962. Can you share some memories from that?
Sure. 1962, my junior year at Eisenhower. Decatur had 2 state championship teams that year. The Steve Decatur basketball team won the basketball tournament, the basketball state title, and Eisenhower won the state baseball tournament that year. One of the things that sticks out about that, now I don't even know how many classifications there are. The big schools and smaller goes on down to the really small schools. Back at that time, there were no classifications. We played, we had probably, I don't even know how many people Eisenhower had, 200 or 300 people or something like that in our class, in a class. But we played against all the big Chicago schools, and we played LaGrange, I believe it was, for the state championship, and beat them. So I think we won, I'm not sure how many tournament games we won, but Mike Henry, a guy named Mike Henry, was a senior that year. He was our pitcher, and we were 16, 17-year-old kids, and we were winning games 2-1, 3-2, low-scoring games back then with youngsters. Mike, I think, walked. We played maybe 7 or 8 tournament games after the season to get to the state final game. I think Mike walked 3 guys in all that time. For a high school pitcher to only walk three guys is amazing. That's why we won. We really didn't have any outstanding ball players, I'd say, but we had Clete Hinton was our manager, and he was just a stickler on fundamentals. We did everything right. We hit the cutoff man. We moved runners over. Did all the little things that I don't really see a lot of on TV today, unfortunately. A lot of swings and misses now. But that was a fun time. My wife Jan keeps reminding me that when we got back to town, we got to ride the fire engine around town. I don't even remember doing that, but maybe I missed that ride, I'm not sure. But anyway, she says we did it. But anyway, that's one of the highlights of my life. I got to play professionally, but to win a state baseball championship was really something. It was fun, yeah.
I was just gonna mention that, for some more info on Fansfield and the Commodores, is a book by John D'Acquisto. And it's called Fastball John, and he played for the Commodores.
He's a pitcher.
And one of the chapters early is devoted to his time in Decatur and where he stayed, and different things that happened when he was in Decatur. It's really interesting.
Johnny D'Acquisto, I talk to him all the time, he's one of my good buddies. He wrote a book, Fastball John. That's another good book y'all ought to get to read. And he's got a lot of stories in there about his time. 1969, I think, he played for the Commodores, or 70, one of those two, 70?
I think it was 70.
70, yeah. He played for the Commodores. He was one of the first guys to throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. That's why his book's called Fastball Johnny, I guess. But anyway, he's an interesting guy. He's an artist in Phoenix, Arizona now. I've got a couple of collages in my basement right now that he did for me. And he's a wonderful painter, artist, really an interesting guy. Played in the big leagues for 17, 18 years, something like that.
I have a sketch that he made for me of Jim DeShays and Lynn Casper in the booth.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, he's a talented guy, interesting guy.
You know, Roe, you talked about Dick Allen,
Yeah,
and you talk about timing's everything. Just to think about, and if you would mention the people that played above you, and in the Cincinnati and the Giants organization and the Cubs organization,
Yeah.
it's amazing the names that are there.
it's all about getting in the right place at the right time, I guess, right? When I was in the Giants organization, Willie McCovey was their first baseman, Hall of Famer. Got traded to the Cubs. Ernie Banks played in front of me, first baseman, Hall of Famer. Went to the White Sox, Richie Allen, first baseman, should be Hall of Famer. David's working on that, right? If anybody deserves to be in there, he does. Cincinnati Reds, Tony Perez, first baseman, Hall of Famer. The Houston Astros organization, Bob Watson, first baseman. Boston Red Sox, Carl Yastrzemski, first baseman, Hall of Famer. I just couldn't get in the right place. I was playing AAA ball and had good enough years that I kept getting thrown into these trades and traded around to different organizations. I just couldn't get over the hump, get in the right place at the right time. No sour grapes, wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It was a great experience. Makes you grow up quick, for sure. But timing and being in the right place at the right time, having somebody like you means so much. 1970, real quickly, one of the teams in the Pacific Coast League was the Spokane Dodgers. That was the Dodgers AAA club. Their manager was Tom Lasorda, and their whole ball club was Steve Yeager, Steve Garvey, Davey Lopes, Billy Russell, Ron Say, Billy Buckner, Vaughn Joshua, Joe Ferguson, Tom Paciorek. That was the whole Spokane ball club. And for you baseball guys that had been around a while, those were the Dodgers for 10 years. Lasorda got the big league job, took all those guys with him, gave him big league jobs for 10 years. So that again, you got to produce when you got the chance, but getting there and getting the chance is what it's all about. Tough to do.
What's your fondest memory of Abe?
You know, Don was talking about Abe, but his Abe was different than the ball player's Abe, right? The one you're talking about is Abe that sat behind the home plate for years and years and years, dressed like Abe Lincoln. Don Turney was his name, but everybody in the whole world called him Abe. He was a piece of work, man. He was awesome. But he was at the ballpark before all the players got there. He was there, the last one to leave when all the ball players left. We played a couple of teams up in Wisconsin in the Midwest League, and we'd get on the bus and leave at midnight, drive all night, or 8 hours or whatever, and get into Appleton, Wisconsin was one of them. Get in there at 8 or 9 in the morning, and we usually the ball game would be over the night before when we were at home in Decatur here with the Commodores, and we'd go get something to eat and then go back to the ballpark, and the bus would leave at midnight. Here's Abe standing right at the doorway of the bus, handing out nickels, and I don't believe he had too many nickels to even buy food with at that time, as I recall. But he'd give all the players, as you'd get on the bus, he'd hand you a nickel. Good luck, pal. Good luck, pal. You know, and so Abe was a fixture at the Commodores ballpark, and you know, to this day, a lot of guys I still talk to that I played against for years in the minor leagues, AAA, big leagues, all over the place, that went through the Midwest League, didn't necessarily play for Decatur, but played for some of the other affiliates that were in the Midwest League. First thing they say to me when we talk, "You ever see Abe around?" They remember Abe Lincoln.
You know, Roll, that book that you wrote was different, right? And you got me a copy.
John Clifford, yeah.
Tim,
Yeah.
to give Leo Mazzoni.
Yes.
And Mazzoni said, when he played for the Commodores in 68 or 9, when
68,
won
well,
15
both
games.
years he played, 68, yeah.
Okay, won 15 games. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
But he said, he told Tim, he said, "I remember 2 things about Decatur." And Tim said, "What's that?" He said, "The smell and Abe."
And the winery, don't forget, yeah, I'm sure he mentioned that too. But yeah, the smell and Abe, that's the two things about Decatur most of those guys remember.
Yes, sir.
How many home runs did you hit that won the ball game?
I hit so many that won games, Johnny, I don't know. I'm just kidding. 2? No, I don't know how many, but that's a big thrill when you can do that. Like in the late innings, if you hit one out and put your team ahead or something and end up winning the game, that's a big deal. That makes you on top of the mountain until the next day, and you strike out 2 or 3 times, then you're in the valley.
Yeah, speaking of home runs, you hit a couple of really long home runs, right? That bounced off Griggle A was across Garfield.
When I played, Decatur had become very industrialized, and like when Don was there and there was no buildings around, and we also had drinking fountains in the dugouts, not ice blocks. So,
Right.
Yeah, you're a little older than I am, not much, but a little bit. But anyway, yeah, Grigolette was right across left field, across the street, across Garfield Street, and every now and then, if you catch one good, you could hit it over in their parking lot and bounce off that building. That made you feel real good for about 2 seconds while you went around the bases.
Could you maybe share some of the thoughts and feelings you had when you first heard that the Commodores were pulling out and Fansfield was coming down?
You take that one, Don.
Well, it's like I say, that was my home. First off, I didn't want to believe it, and I was lost. You know, I mean, to think that I'd spent the better part of 29 years around that place, and all of a sudden it wasn't going to be there. You know, it's like cutting your leg off almost, you know. And but I was actually lost for a while because I spent so much time there. Listen, I had that set of keys from the time I was about 14 till they tore that building down. All the time that the Giants was in there, I didn't really work there, even though I spent a lot of time there. I had that key ring, and I kept saying, "You want these keys?" They said, "No, you might need them sometime." I don't know what they thought I was gonna need them for, but, you know, I'd go up over there at Park, just walk the gate, walk through the gate, knew everybody there. Never had a season ticket, pass, and nothing else. It was just me, and they knew me, and I was, you know, I guess they knew that if I didn't get through that gate, I'd go down and unlock one of the other gates and get in anyway. I don't know, but yeah, I was really probably pretty close to being devastated about it. You know, it's just like if something would happen to your own house tonight. You know, it's really a rude awakening. You know, and it's like I say, I'd spent so much time there. I guess I had time on my hands then, so I got married. But
Took him 2 hours to say that.
Do you remember in 1969, I was a sophomore at Milliken, that they were tearing up Milliken to build Griswold and Kirkland? The Milliken football team practiced in the outfield out there. Do you remember us out there?
I was working then, so it's possibly I wasn't there. I probably saw it, don't remember it. Okay. But shoot, through the years we had American Legion, we had high school games out there. There was a youth league at one time, played games out there. I mean, you know, that park had a schedule for the Decatur team, but then we filled in a lot of dates and let other people play. Like I said, MacArthur, I've seen MacArthur and Eisenhower, Milliken play. Used to be Jim Freeman played, 52, 3, and 4. He lived here locally. He worked at the Q in the wintertime. They were independent, didn't have any parent team. But in the summertime, he played ball. Larry Lovelace lived here in town, worked at the Signal Depot, and in between seasons, he lost an arm up about his elbow. He was a pitcher, so he pitched with one arm the next year. Art Gorham lived here, taught school out of ADM. Bob Appleby was a professor at Milliken University. So I mean, you know, there was a big variety of guys that made up those teams all the way through the whole thing. And it just, I don't know, it's like I say, it becomes one big family to you. I never collected autographs. Why would I get an autograph? I'm walking beside him every day. Why would I get his autograph, you know? I don't know what else to say about it.
You mentioned to me the other day, and I never heard this, that the park in Danville is identical plan to Vance Field. Is that true?
Yeah, when they built the ballpark they have in Danville, they come over here and looked at this ballpark, and they actually built it in miniature over there. That ballpark over there holds about 3,800, I want to say. This one held 50. It don't have as many seats in the grandstand, and quite as many, if I remember right, it's too short in the box seats. But it holds about 3,800 people. But the layout of the grandstand is practically identical to what this park here was. They come over and looked at it. They went back and built a ballpark, and it's like I said, I was surprised when I went in there. I looked at it and I said, gee, this looks like home. It was small.
Yeah, I'm just throwing this out to anybody or whatever. I was the official scorer the last season of Commodores. And I have every scorebook from all the games, including the very last game. So I'm just, you know, when I pass, I want someone to have it. I don't know who to go to with it. So if anybody here has any ideas what I can do with those 40 or 38 home games we had, including the very last game, I've got the official book. And I would like to give it away if there's somewhere that would be, you know, kept in memory of the Commodores.
Roger, let me talk to Ann Owens about that. She's the head of the History of Heartland organization, along with Brett. And there's an affiliation with the library and things, something like that maybe. But let's talk about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and we definitely want to follow up with you on that, because we want, you know, our agenda is to make sure those things get preserved for, you know, for generations to come.
And I have the program from the very last game too.
Oh, that's awesome.
He said he'd throw in a photo of Rick Richardson too.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Well, I've got team photos from 63 all the way to 74, things of that nature that I don't know what to do with. I got the Pound Review clippings from the last game, the different articles and things of that nature that are just sitting at home.
That's awesome. Let's make sure we get your contact info before you walk out of here.
Do you know where Rick Richardson resides today?
I do not know.
Okay, I just thought maybe.
Last I knew was Milwaukee.
Is that right? Well, 1974, I remember, Roger, you came up with a lot of money all of a sudden. I just went with you. You where he was.
Me and Mike Robles.
Oh, the commemorative coin. So did everybody get a commemorative coin? Those are a limited edition production done by History of the Heartland this year to commemorate the famous building that's going down right now. You guys probably have memories of the Walrus manufacturing business that was right across just west of the Wabash station. And that business operated from 1901 to 1972, and they produced a variety of refrigeration type equipment, most famously soda fountain installations back when every corner drugstore had a soda fountain installation, and Walrus would not only produce the products, but they'd go wherever they needed to install it and get it done. They installed the soda fountain at Union Station and St. Louis, for example, so they were one of the leaders in that particular industry. So we've got a commemorative token for Walrus. So now you guys all have one of those tokens. They're not for sale, so either have one or you don't.
What was the family name that owns Walrus?
Well, there was several founders. One was the Gray family, and one was Ferries, Dr. Ferries, who is very famous in Decatur, Ferries Parkway and Ferries Park. Those of you that remember Ferries Park, named after Mr. Ferries, who was an entrepreneur, and he was a serial entrepreneur. He started a number of companies, and an inventor. And what he recognized, he was an engineer, he recognized that there was the water control expertise here in Decatur, and the Mueller Company that were experts, and a lot of engineers that knew how to control water. And so that was the key to that particular business, was understanding that technology. He wasn't an expert in that particular domain, but he knew that he could hire the expertise he needed right here in Decatur, and he did that, and they went on to be very successful. And there's a lot of companies in Decatur in that type of industry. The Mueller, of course, with Burke's Pumps, another kind of water control company, Walrus, and a few others. Okay, so we're going to sign off now. Thank you very much for coming.
An autograph, you're welcome to go make
We've got the official pin here for you, Roe, and Donnie, if you guys want to grab their autographs before you leave. Thank you very much for coming, and again, thank you guys for being so generous with your time.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I hope we didn't bore you too much, but a lot of rich tradition with the Commodores. Appreciate all of you.
And those of you with memories of Fansfield and the Commodores, please make sure we get your name before you walk out of here. We want to talk to everybody that has memories to share. Thank you.
About this baseball, I bought it from somebody, and it said, here's what it says. It says found on Roe